My husband says I'm lazy, but I've been hiding my whole life from my coworkers for 9 years. I thought it was harmless until one office snoop decided to dig into my private world. I've always believed that what happens at home stays at home. That's just how I was raised. My parents were private people, and I learned early that the office isn't your family. It's a place where you trade your time for a paycheck, not your soul. So when I started working at this company 9 years ago, I made a rule: no personal life at work. Not because I'm ashamed, I'm not. I have a good life. I'm married to a man I love. We have twin daughters who are 7 years old, a dog, a nice house in the suburbs. I play softball on weekends, I kayak when the weather's good, and once a year I go mountain climbing with an old friend from college. That's my life and it's full. But at work, I'm just Ali. I use a shortened version of my name, Ali from Alexandra, and I never ever bring up my husband or kids. My coworkers think I'm an enigma. They've accepted that I don't share. When they talk about their weekends or their kids' soccer games, I nod and listen, but I never offer anything about myself. If someone asks me a direct question, I redirect. How was your weekend? Oh, quiet, yours. Then I move on to someone else. It's not that I'm unfriendly. I've made some genuine friendships at this place, but friendships don't require you to spill your whole life story. We talk about movies, books, the new restaurant that opened downtown. We can have a perfectly good conversation without me mentioning that my daughter just learned to ride a bike or that my husband and I had a fight about the dishes. Those are my private moments. They don't belong in a cubicle. Then Melinda joined the office last year. She came in all smiles, eager to make friends. At first I thought she was just friendly, maybe a little lonely. But within a few weeks I noticed something off. She would hover around people's desks, ask seemingly innocent questions, then later I'd hear her repeating those details in a way that felt like currency. She was collecting information, not to connect, to hold. She had a knack for remembering who said what about whom, and she'd use it to get people on her side or to deflect blame. I watched her do it to a junior analyst named Hank. He'd mentioned in passing that his mother was sick, and Melinda used that to get him to cover her shifts 3 times. Then she gossiped about it to another coworker, saying Hank was a pushover. That was when I knew Melinda was a snoop, and I was her biggest challenge because I gave her nothing. For months she tried. She'd ask me where I grew up, what I did on weekends, if I had any siblings. I'd give vague answers. I'm from around here. Nothing special. I'm an only child. Not true, I have a brother, but I wasn't about to offer that. She'd smile and move on, but I could see the frustration in her eyes. I became the office mystery, and she became obsessed with solving me. It all came to a head last Friday. I walked into the break room for lunch and saw Melinda standing in the middle of a circle of coworkers, holding her phone like a trophy. She was grinning. And I mean grinning like a cat who just swallowed a goldfish. When she saw me, she announced, loud enough for everyone to hear, "So Ali, I know all about you now. You're married, you have twin daughters, you have a dog, you own a house in the suburbs. You play softball, you kayak, you climb mountains. And I even found your Facebook page." My heart stopped. I didn't say anything. I just stood there holding my lunch bag, feeling the heat rise to my face. The room went quiet. Everyone turned to look at me. Melinda held up her phone, scrolling through photos. "Cute kids," she said. "Your husband's handsome. How come you never told us?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her phone and throw it out the window, but I didn't. I just said, "Because it's none of your business." Then I turned around and walked out of the break room. I heard her laugh behind me, and a few of my coworkers mumbled awkwardly. I went to my desk and sat there for 10 minutes shaking. How did she find me? I use a fake name on Facebook. Ali, my married name, is different from my maiden name. I keep my profile locked down as much as possible, but some of my photos are shared with friends of friends, so they're not fully private. She must have used some internet search service to connect the dots. White pages, maybe. That's the only way. I reported her to HR that afternoon. I explained everything: the obsessive questioning, the invasion of my privacy, the public announcement. But now I'm worried. My boss is a good guy, but Melinda has been around long enough to make allies. She's friends with the office manager, and she's been helping on a big project that my boss cares about. I don't know if they'll take my side. Some of my coworkers have already told me I'm overreacting, that it's not a big deal, that she was just being friendly. But they don't understand. They don't know what it's like to have someone peel back your layers like an onion, exposing every private part of your life to people you only share a break room with. I don't bring my home to work because I don't want to. My family is mine. My kids are mine. My marriage is mine. And I refuse to let some gossip turn it into office entertainment. Now I'm waiting to hear back from HR. My husband knows and he's furious. He wants me to quit, but I've been here 9 years. I built this career. I'm not going to let Melinda chase me out. But I also don't know how to go back to that office and face everyone who now knows my whole life story. The cat's out of the bag and I can't stuff it back in. That same week, I thought my work problems were the worst thing happening in my life. Then my best friend of 18 years tried to destroy my marriage right in front of me, and I didn't even see it coming. I met Sarah when I was 11 years old. My family had just moved to a new country. I didn't speak the language well and I was terrified. My sister-in-law introduced us, and from that first day, Sarah was my lifeline. We went to school together, went through puberty together, cried over boys together. She was my brain twin. We finished each other's sentences. We planned our weddings together when we were 14, both dreaming of white dresses and big families. That's the kind of friendship we had. Now we're 29. I've been married to my husband for 6 years and we have a 2-year-old son. Sarah and I still hang out, though not as much. We have different friend groups now, but she's still the one I text when I need to vent. I thought she was my person. It started last Wednesday. I usually work in the office from 9 to 2, and I take a 30-minute break for a second breakfast. Sometimes I walk 5 minutes to my husband's office and we grab coffee. Sometimes I go to a cafe near my job. I also travel for work occasionally, different cities, overnight trips, nothing glamorous, but every now and then I mention it to Sarah in casual conversation. Oh, I'll be in Chicago Wednesday, want to grab dinner Thursday instead? That kind of thing. Last Tuesday night, there was a red alert for severe weather. Massive flooding predicted. My husband owns a small business, so he was up at 6 Wednesday morning to close it down and put up flood barriers. By 7:30, he was back home making breakfast for me and our son. I didn't have to go anywhere because my work trip that day had been canceled due to the weather. So we spent the whole day together, the three of us plus the dog. It was actually nice. We watched cartoons, built a pillow fort, ate pancakes. It didn't even start raining until 1 in the afternoon. At 3, Sarah texted me, "Are you home already? It's flooding where you were supposed to be traveling." I texted back, "Home safe, thanks for checking." We didn't go out until Friday. Simple. Saturday morning, Sarah and I have the same gym class. We always go together. After class, she pulled me aside and said we needed to talk in private. I thought maybe she was having marriage problems or something. We went out to my car and she looked at me with this really serious face. Then she said, "On Wednesday, I saw your husband with a woman. They were making out and your kid was in the car." I froze, completely froze. My whole body went cold. For about 5 seconds, I believed her. I pictured my husband, the man I've known since I was 11, the father of my child, kissing some stranger in a car with our son in the back. I felt sick. But then my brain caught up. Wednesday, the red alert, my husband making pancakes in his pajamas, my son dumping a bowl of applesauce on the floor, the three of us sitting on the couch watching Paw Patrol while the rain finally started. I was there. I saw the whole day. I asked Sarah, "Are you sure it was Wednesday, this week's Wednesday?" "Yes," she said, "absolutely positive." "At what time?" "About 11 in the morning." "During the red alert?" "Yes." "And you're 100% sure?" She launched into this whole description. My husband, supposedly making out with a gorgeous blonde woman who looked like a Barbie doll. She said she saw them in a car and my kid was in the back seat. She described the street, the car color, everything. It was detailed. It was convincing, and it was a complete lie. I didn't scream. I just sat there staring at her, and then I said very calmly, "That's impossible. My husband was home with me all day Wednesday. We never left the house." The look on her face, I'll never forget it. Her eyes went wide, her mouth opened, and she just sort of froze. Then she started backtracking. "Oh, maybe it was Tuesday or Thursday." "I don't remember exactly." I said, "You literally just told me you were positive it was Wednesday at 11. You said it 3 times. She started crying and apologizing. She said she must have misremembered. She's been so stressed lately. She didn't mean to upset me. I didn't say anything. I just let her ramble. Then I told her I had to go home and think. I drove home shaking. I told my husband everything. He was furious. Not at me, at her. He said he'd never even met Sarah alone, never given her any reason to make up something like that. We talked for hours. We couldn't figure out why she would do it. Then I started looking at our texts. Over the past few months, she had been asking a lot of questions about my schedule. When I traveled, when my husband worked late where we went on weekends, I thought she was just being a good friend checking in. But now it looked like she was gathering information, trying to find gaps where she could plant a lie. That night I called her. I didn't yell. I said, "Sarah, I need you to tell me the truth. Why did you lie about my husband?" She broke down. She told me that she's been jealous of my life. She said she's unhappy in her own marriage, that I have a great husband and a cute kid and a good job, and she wanted to tear it down. She admitted she'd been hoping I would divorce my husband, leave him, and then she and I could travel together like we used to. She said she missed our old friendship and thought if I was single again we could go back to how it was. I couldn't believe it. She wanted to blow up my family just so we could be single friends again. She didn't care about my son, my husband, my happiness. She only cared about what she wanted. I told her we weren't friends anymore. I blocked her number. I blocked her on social media. I told our mutual friends what happened and most of them understood. A few said I was being too harsh, that she was just going through a rough patch. I didn't care. You don't try to destroy someone's marriage because you're lonely. That's not a rough patch. That's a character flaw. It's been a week now. My husband and I are fine. We talked about it a lot and he's been amazing. He said he felt violated, like someone tried to frame him for a crime he didn't commit. And honestly, that's exactly what it was. She tried to plant evidence in my mind. If I had been dumber or more insecure, or if we hadn't spent that Wednesday together, I might have believed her. I might have started questioning everything. I might have ruined my own marriage because of a lie. I still don't fully understand why she did it. Jealousy is a hell of a drug, I guess. But I learned something important that week. Some people will pretend to love you for 18 years and then try to burn your life down because they're bored and unhappy. And the only thing you can do is believe your own eyes and trust the person who's actually in your life every day. As for Sarah, the last I heard, her husband found out too. He was furious. She lost more than just one friend that week. I don't know what'll happen to her and I don't care. I've got my family, my home, my life, and I'm not letting anyone take that away. I thought I had my work life perfectly compartmentalized. I've worked at the same office for 9 years. 9 years of climbing the ladder, keeping my head down, and never once letting anyone in on what happens when I leave the building. I'm not ashamed of my life. I have a husband, twin daughters, a dog, a nice house. I play softball on weekends, kayak when the weather's good, and every few months I go mountain climbing with a buddy from college. That's my real life. But at work, I'm just Ali, the woman who shows up, does her job, and leaves. No family photos on my desk. No stories about my kids' soccer games. No mention of my husband's promotion or our vacation plans. I like it that way. Work is work, home is home. The two don't mix. My coworkers have always thought I'm a bit of an enigma. They talk about their spouses, their kids, their weekend barbecues. When I'm asked a direct question, I redirect. How was your weekend? Good, yours, and then I move on to someone else. I've made genuine friendships with a few people over the years, Hank, Rob, Lucy, but we talk about work, sports, movies, not my personal life. I never gave anyone ammunition and I never asked for theirs, it worked. Then we hired Melinda last year. Melinda came in like she owned the place. She was friendly, sure, but there was something off. She spent her first few weeks getting close to everyone, not in a normal get-to-know-you way, but in a strategic way. She'd ask questions that seemed innocent but were actually digging. Where do you live? Oh, that's a nice area. How long have you been married? Do you have kids? She kept a mental file on everyone, I could tell. I kept my answers vague. Live in the suburbs, yes, no. I didn't give her anything. She didn't like that. I could feel her watching me. She'd linger near my desk, try to overhear phone calls. I started taking calls outside. I stopped eating lunch in the break room. I gave her nothing. And it drove her nuts. Last Friday, Melinda came into work looking like the cat that swallowed the canary. She had this smug smile all morning. At lunch, she gathered everyone in the break room and announced, loud enough for the whole floor to hear, that I am married with 2 daughters, a dog, and a nice house. She said I play softball, kayak, and go mountain climbing. She said I'm on Facebook under a shortened version of my name and that my photos weren't fully private. She'd done her research. She used white pages or something to connect the dots between my work name and my real name. She found my profile, scrolled through my public photos, and then she outed me to everyone. The room went quiet. My coworkers stared at me. A few of them looked impressed, like they'd finally solved a mystery, but I felt sick. My face went hot. My hands started shaking. I didn't say anything. I just walked out of the break room and went back to my desk. I reported her to HR that afternoon. I told them she had been stalking my personal information, that she'd invaded my privacy, that she'd created a hostile work environment. They took a statement and said they'd investigate. Here's the thing, my boss is a no-nonsense guy. He hates drama. A few months ago, he got diagnosed with cancer. He's been handling it quietly, still coming to work, still running the department. But he was also assigned this huge project, the biggest of the year. He never hands out important projects unless he knows you can handle them. Last week, he called me into his office and told me I was taking over that project. He said he trusted me because I kept my head down and got the job done. He didn't care about my personal life. He cared about results. Melinda heard about it. She was furious. She thought she deserved that project because she'd been sucking up to everyone. She'd been trying to build alliances, gather dirt, use information as leverage. And here I was, the private one, getting promoted over her. That's why she exposed me, to humiliate me, to make me look like a liar, to make my coworkers think I was hiding something shameful. But here's the irony, my coworkers didn't care. After the initial shock, they actually started treating me better. Rob came up to me and said, I always knew you had a life outside this place. Good for you. Lucy asked about my kids. Hank told me he kayaks too. The things I'd been hiding were just normal. The only one who made it weird was Melinda. HR took 2 weeks to investigate. They interviewed everyone. They looked at her emails, her browser history, her phone records. They found out she'd been doing this to other coworkers too, collecting personal information, gossiping, trying to turn people against each other. She'd been a toxic presence from day one. They fired her. I got the project. My boss told me he respected how I handled it. You didn't retaliate. You didn't feed the drama. You just did your job. That's all I ever wanted. But I'll be honest, the whole thing shook me. I've always been private because I've seen what happens when people share too much. Last year, Hank shared that his wife was leaving him and suddenly everyone was gossiping about him behind his back. Rob mentioned his son was struggling in school and people started questioning his work ethic. Lucy talked about her mother's illness, and a month later she was passed over for a promotion because management thought she was too distracted. I learned early, the workplace is not your family, it's a business. And when you give people personal information, they can use it against you. Melinda tried to use my life against me. She failed. But not everyone will fail, so I'm still private. I still don't put family photos on my desk. I still redirect when people ask about weekends. But now my coworkers understand. They know I'm not being rude, I'm just protecting what matters. And honestly, the twins are 6 now. They don't care about my work drama. They care about whether I'm home in time for dinner. That's what matters. I never thought I'd catch my husband cheating on me with his ex-wife at our son's 7th birthday party. But here we are. Let me back up. I'm 27, he's 37. We've been married 3 years, together for 6. I knew from day one that Peter is bisexual and I never had a problem with it. I also knew he had an ex-wife, Allison. They divorced a year before we met, no kids together. She was part of his past and I was fine with that. What I wasn't fine with was his family. They're the kind of homophobic that smiles to your face and then whispers about how Peter should get back with a real woman as soon as you turn around. His mother, in particular, never missed a chance to bring up Allison. She was so good for him, she'd say. Such a shame it didn't work out. We adopted our son, Jack, 2 years ago. He was 5 at the time and he's my whole world. I'm his dad in every way that matters. Peter loves him too, but the adoption was my idea. I'd always wanted to be a father and Jack needed a stable home. Peter agreed and we brought him into our lives. Jack calls me dad and Peter papa. We're a family. Last month was Jack's 7th birthday. We decided to celebrate at Peter's hometown about 2 hours away. His parents have a big house with a yard and Jack loves playing with his cousins. I wasn't thrilled about spending the weekend with his mother, but it was for Jack, so we packed up and drove down on Saturday morning. The party was scheduled for 2 p.m. By 1:30, the house was full of kids and aunts and uncles. Jack was running around with a bunch of balloons, his face painted like a tiger. I was setting up the cake, a chocolate dinosaur with green icing, his favorite, when my mother-in-law came over and said, "Oh, by the way, Allison is coming." She heard it was Jack's birthday and wanted to drop off a gift. I froze. "You invited her without asking me or Peter?" She gave me that fake smile. "She's family, Peter still cares about her, it's fine." I didn't want to ruin Jack's party, so I swallowed it. I told myself I'd deal with it later. Allison arrived around 2:15 holding a wrapped gift and looking like she just stepped out of a magazine. Blonde, tall, perfect makeup. She hugged Peter's mother like she was coming home. Peter greeted her politely, but I saw his eyes linger a second too long. I spent the next hour playing with Jack. We did the piñata, we played tag, we opened presents. At 3:30, Jack wanted to cut the cake. I looked around for Peter and Allison. They weren't in the living room, they weren't in the kitchen. I asked my mother-in-law and she shrugged. They probably went to talk, don't worry about it. But I was worried, something felt off. I walked through the house checking each room. I finally reached Peter's old bedroom at the end of the hall. The door was slightly open. I pushed it. They were undressing. Peter's shirt was off and Allison was unbuttoning her blouse. They hadn't seen me yet. I stood there for maybe 3 seconds. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just walked back to the party. I didn't say a word to anyone. I went over to Jack, knelt down and helped him light the candles. We sang together, I took pictures. I kept a smile on my face while my insides were burning. When the cake was cut and the ice cream was served, I saw Peter and Allison come back downstairs. Peter looked flustered. Allison was red in the face. Peter came straight to me. "Why did you cut the cake without me? That was disrespectful." I looked at him and said very quietly, "I'm sorry. I just thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants." He went pale, his mouth open but nothing came out. I didn't give him time to answer. I scooped Jack up, grabbed our overnight bags and walked out the door. Jack was confused. "Where are we going, Dad?" he asked. "We're going to a hotel, buddy. We'll get pizza and watch movies." He cheered. Kids are resilient. I was. We checked into a Holiday Inn near the highway. I put Jack to bed at 7 p.m., then sat on the floor of the bathroom and cried for an hour. My hands were shaking. I couldn't believe this was real. My husband, the man I trusted, had cheated on me with his ex-wife at our son's birthday party in his childhood bedroom while our son was downstairs blowing out candles. Peter started calling around 8. I ignored it. Then he texted, "It's not what you think, we were just talking." She was upset about her divorce. I was comforting her. "Yeah, comforting with your shirt off." He called again at 9. Then his mother called. She left a voicemail telling me I was overreacting and ruining the family gathering. "Peter and Allison have history. You need to be more understanding. This is what happens when you two are together. You're too sensitive." The next morning I drove home with Jack. I didn't tell Peter where we were. I called my lawyer on Monday. I filed for divorce on Wednesday. That's when things got ugly. Peter tried to convince me that it was a mistake, that Allison had initiated it, that he would never do it again. I told him I didn't care. He begged. He cried. He said he still loved me. I said, "You should have thought of that before you took your clothes off in front of your ex-wife." His mother started calling him every day, telling him I was being unfair, that Jack needed a father figure who was so emotional. I found out later that she had encouraged the whole thing. She'd invited Allison. She'd given them privacy. She'd hoped they would reconcile so Peter could be normal again. She literally planned for my husband to cheat on me. But the worst part, the stalking. A week after I filed, Peter showed up at my office. I work at a small marketing firm and he waited in the lobby until I came out for lunch. He grabbed my arm and said, "We need to talk. I have visitation rights. You can't keep Jack from me." I pulled away. "Visitation rights? There's no custody order yet, and if you touch me again, I'll call the cops." He backed off, but he didn't stop. He started following me home. I'd see his car parked a block from my apartment. He'd text me at 2 a.m. saying he missed me. I changed my locks. I got a restraining order. Last week he violated it. He came to my apartment building, tried the door, and when it didn't open, he started banging on the windows. I called 911. The police arrested him for violating the order and for attempted breaking and entering. He spent 2 nights in jail. After that, his family went nuclear. They started spreading lies about me, that I was abusive, that I was alienating Jack from his real father, that I had cheated first. I've lost mutual friends. People I thought were close to me have taken his side because I'm the one who broke up the family. They don't see that he broke it the second he chose Allison over us. I'm still in the middle of the divorce. Peter is trying to get joint custody, but I have evidence of the cheating, texts from his mother, the timing, photos from the party. I also have documentation of his stalking and the arrest. My lawyer says I have a strong case, but what hurts most isn't the legal stuff, it's the betrayal. I gave 6 years of my life to this man, I adopted his son, I loved him. And he threw it away for a woman his mother picked out for him. Jack is doing okay. He's too young to understand why Dad and Papa aren't living together. I tell him that Papa made some mistakes, and we need time apart. I'll never speak badly about Peter in front of him, but I won't lie either. Jack will learn the truth when he's old enough. As for Peter, he's out on bail. His mother is paying for a lawyer to fight me for custody. They're trying to paint me as unstable. But I have a stable job, a clean record, and a son who loves me. I'm not going anywhere. I don't care if his family hates me. I don't care if we lose friends. I have Jack, and I'll protect him from all of them. If that means going through a messy divorce with a cheating husband and a homophobic ex-mother-in-law, so be it. I'd do it 1,000 times over to keep my son safe. I've always been a private person. I don't mean I'm shy or antisocial. I just believe in a clear wall between work and home. I spent 9 years at a marketing firm, working my way up from assistant to senior account manager. In all that time, I never once mentioned that I had a husband, twin daughters, a dog, or a house in the suburbs. I played in a co-ed softball league, I kayaked on weekends, and occasionally I'd go mountain climbing. But at work, I was just Ali, short for Alexandra, with a husband's last name I never used. I kept my Facebook profile locked down, only visible to people I knew personally. I thought I was safe. Then Melinda got hired. She was a chatty blonde in her late 20s, and she made it her mission to get close to everyone in the office. At first, I thought she was just friendly. She'd bring in donuts, ask about weekend plans, offer to help with projects. But within a few weeks, I noticed she was always listening a little too closely when people talked about personal stuff. She'd remember the name of someone's kid or the street they lived on. And then she'd use that information later in subtle ways to hold over people's heads. Like she knew something you didn't want shared. I saw her do it to 3 coworkers in 1 year, so I kept my distance. When she asked if I had kids, I said not that I'm aware of and changed the subject. She didn't like that. Last Friday, I came into the office and the vibe was weird. People were whispering. Melinda was sitting at the lunch table with this smug grin, like a cat that swallowed a canary. At lunch, she stood up and announced to the whole break room, "Everyone, I want you to meet the real Ali." She's married to a man named David. They have twin daughters named Chloe and Zoe, a golden retriever named Biscuit, and they live in a 4-bedroom house in Oakwood. She plays softball for a rec league called the Mighty Ducks. She kayaks every summer, and she posted a picture of herself on a mountain summit last Memorial Day. Oh, and her Facebook profile says she turned 36 last October. The room went quiet. I felt my face go red. My heart was pounding. I couldn't believe she had dug up all that. I asked her how she found me, and she said she used White Pages and cross-referenced my short name with my husband's job and our property tax records. She had spent weeks on it. She thought it was a game. I went straight to HR and filed a formal complaint about invasion of privacy and hostile behavior. My boss, a woman named Janice, called me into her office that afternoon. But instead of backing me up, she said, "Ali, you have to understand Melinda is a good worker and everyone likes her. People feel like you're hiding something. Maybe if you were more open, this wouldn't have happened." I told her that I had a right to keep my personal life separate. She said, "This is a family office. We don't like secrets." I got written up for lack of transparency. Can you believe that? Written up for not telling my coworkers I had kids. Melinda didn't get any punishment. The next week, I found out she had started spreading rumors that I was ashamed of my family, that I was embarrassed to be married. Some people actually believed her. I lost a few work friendships I thought were solid. I talked to a lawyer. He said I could have a case for harassment under state law, but it would take months and cost thousands. Meanwhile, the office environment became toxic. I'd walk into a room and people would stop talking. Melinda would give me this fake sympathetic look. I couldn't take it. I started applying for other jobs. It took 3 months, but I got an offer at a different agency. I put in my 2 weeks' notice. On my last day, Melinda came up to me and said, "I hope you learned something." I just stared at her and said, "I learned that some people have nothing better to do than ruin others' lives." I walked out and never looked back. Sometimes I wonder if I overreacted. Maybe if I had just been more open from the start, none of this would have happened. But then I remember that I have a right to my privacy. My home life is mine. I don't owe anyone details about my family, especially not someone who collects them like trophies. If that makes me the bad guy, so be it. At least now I work somewhere where people respect boundaries. And Melinda, last I heard, she got promoted. That tells you everything you need to know about that company. If you think coworkers can be toxic, wait until you hear what my best friend did. I'm still shaking when I think about it. Her name is Sarah, and we met when I was 11 years old. I had just moved to a new country with my family, and my sister-in-law introduced us. Sarah became my rock. We went through middle school, high school, college, and adulthood together. When I met my husband at 18, she cheered us on. She was maid of honor at our wedding. She held my hand when I gave birth to my daughter 2 years ago. She was family, so when she tried to blow up my marriage, I didn't understand. It started last week. I work a flexible schedule, usually in the office from 9 to 2 with a 30-minute break. My husband's office is a 5-minute walk from mine, so sometimes I meet him for second breakfast or coffee. Last Wednesday, I was supposed to travel to a city about an hour away for a client meeting. But Tuesday night, the weather service issued a red alert, heavy flooding predicted. My boss canceled the trip by 10 p.m., so Wednesday morning, I stayed home with my 2-year-old. My husband went out at 6 a.m. to close up his business and put up flood barriers. He was back home by 7:30 making pancakes. The rain didn't start until 1 p.m. We stayed inside together all day. Me, my husband, and our toddler, that's a fact. Around 3 p.m., Sarah texted me, "Are you home already? It's flooding where you traveled." I replied, "Home safe, thanks." We didn't go out again until Friday. Saturday morning, we had our usual gym class. Afterwards, Sarah pulled me aside and said she needed to talk privately. We went to my car. She looked nervous, like she was about to deliver bad news. She said, "On Wednesday, I saw your husband. He was in a car with a woman making out. Your kid was in the back seat." I froze, my mind raced. Then I remembered I was home all day with him. I knew for a fact he couldn't have been anywhere else, but I didn't want to accuse her of lying yet. I asked 3 times, "Are you sure it was this Wednesday?" She said yes each time. I asked the time. She said about 11 a.m. I asked if it was during the red alert. She said yes. I asked if she was 100% sure. Then she launched into this detailed description. My husband kissing a tall blonde woman with a ponytail in a silver SUV outside the Denny's near the highway. She even described what my kid was wearing, a blue jacket with a whale pattern. My kid was in that jacket that day because we had stayed home. That's when I knew she was lying. Because I was holding my daughter in that jacket when I answered her text at 3 p.m. I told her calmly, "He was home with me the whole day. We didn't leave the house." Her face went white. She stuttered, said she must have mixed up the days. I said, "No, you confirmed it 3 times. You had all the details. You wanted me to believe that." She started crying, said she was just trying to look out for me. I said, "By lying about my husband cheating, what were you hoping would happen?" She didn't answer. I drove home. Later, I talked to some mutual friends. Turns out Sarah had been jealous of my marriage for years. She thought if I divorced my husband, we'd have more time to hang out and travel together like when we were single. She actually admitted to another friend that she wanted me to be a single mom so we could be free again. I cut her off completely, blocked her number, deleted her from social media. It's been a week and I still feel sick. I trusted her for 18 years. She was my sister. And she tried to ruin my family because she wanted a travel buddy. Some people don't deserve to know anything about your life, not your job, not your husband, not even your kid's jacket. I thought I knew what betrayal felt like until I caught my husband undressing with his ex-wife at our son's birthday party. That was the moment my whole world shattered. But what I found out later, what his ex-wife revealed, made me realize I had only seen the surface of the wreckage. I'm a 27-year-old man married to Peter, who is 37. We've been together for 6 years, married for 3. He has a son, Jack, who was 7 at the time. We adopted Jack together after we got married, and I love him like my own blood. Peter is bisexual. I always knew that, and I never had a problem with it. I also never had a problem with his ex-wife Allison until that day. But his family, that's a different story. They're the kind of homophobic that smiles at you in public and whispers behind your back that you're confusing Peter. They spent years telling him he should get back together with Allison, that it was natural and that he was just going through a phase. I tried to ignore them. For Jack's sake, I kept the peace. We lived 2 hours away from his hometown, so we only visited for holidays and birthdays. But last September, we drove down for Jack's 7th birthday party at his grandmother's house. It was supposed to be a small celebration, cake, presents, cousins. I was nervous because of the usual tension, but I wanted Jack to have a good time. The party started at 2 p.m. I was helping Jack open presents when the doorbell rang. My mother-in-law answered it, and in walked Allison. She was carrying a gift bag and smiling like she belonged there. I didn't want to cause a scene, so I stayed quiet. I focused on Jack. We played with his new action figures, ran around the backyard, and I helped him blow out the candles on his cake. But during the cake cutting, I noticed Peter and Allison were missing. I checked the living room, empty, the kitchen, nobody. I went upstairs and heard a muffled sound from Peter's old bedroom. I pushed the door open and saw them. They were standing by the bed, half undressed. Allison was unbuttoning her blouse. Peter was pulling his shirt over his head. They froze when they saw me. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just backed out of the room and walked downstairs. My hands were shaking, but I refused to ruin Jack's birthday. I went back to the backyard and helped cut the cake. I smiled for photos. I talked to the cousins. I acted like nothing happened. Around 4 p.m., guests started leaving. Peter and Allison came downstairs separately. He pulled me into the kitchen and said, "You shouldn't have cut the cake without me. That was disrespectful." I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "I'm sorry. I thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants." His face went pale. He didn't say a word. I picked up Jack and walked out. I drove to our hotel, put Jack to bed, and then I sat in the bathroom and finally let myself cry. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to pack up and leave that night, but Jack was so excited about the next day's zoo trip. I couldn't take that from him. The next morning, Peter showed up at the hotel. He begged me to talk. He said it was a mistake that Allison had come on to him, that he was weak, that he regretted it. He swore it would never happen again. I told him I needed space. We finished the weekend in the same city but separate rooms. When we got home, I moved into the guest room. Jack asked why Daddy was sleeping in the office and I said I was working late. I couldn't tell him the truth. For 2 weeks, I lived in a fog. I didn't eat. I barely slept. I kept replaying that image in my head. I called a lawyer and started the divorce papers, but Peter begged for another chance. He said he would go to therapy, cut off his family, do anything. I was torn. Then 3 weeks after the party, Allison reached out to me. She said she wanted to meet alone at a coffee shop. I almost said no, but curiosity won. She sat across from me, sipping an iced latte, and said, "I need to tell you something. I was wrong to go after Peter, but there's something else you should know." I asked what. She said, "Peter and I have been sleeping together on and off for the past 3 years, but I also need to tell you that I didn't just come to the party because your mother-in-law invited me. I came because I thought Peter would finally leave you for me once I told him something." Told him what? She looked down at her hands. I told him that he has a daughter, a 14-year-old daughter, with me. The room spun. I gripped the table. "What are you talking about?" She said that years before I met Peter, she got pregnant and didn't tell him. She raised the girl alone. She only decided to come forward now because she thought it would get Peter back. She showed me a photo of a teenage girl. The girl looked exactly like Peter, same eyes, same smile. I didn't know if it was true. But I called Peter right there and told him what she said. He went silent. Then he said, "I need to get a paternity test." Long story short, it was true. Peter had a 14-year-old daughter he never knew about. Allison had kept it secret for over a decade and only revealed it when she thought it would ruin my marriage. But here's the part that broke me. Peter admitted that he had been seeing her off and on for 3 years, not just that one time at the party. He had lied to me repeatedly, and he had only come clean because Allison forced his hand. I filed for divorce. I got full custody of Jack, the adoption was finalized, and Peter didn't fight it. He was too busy trying to build a relationship with his teenage daughter, who now hated him for abandoning her. 6 months later, I'm living in a new apartment with Jack. He's adjusting. Some days he asks why we don't see Daddy anymore. I tell him that Daddy made some bad choices and needs to work on himself. It's not a lie. As for Peter, he's trying to co-parent with Allison, but it's a mess. She's still telling people I was the side piece. His family says I was never good enough anyway. I don't care anymore. I have my son. I have my self-respect. I don't know if I'll ever trust someone again. But at least now I know that the people who love you can hurt you the most and that you can survive it. Sometimes the betrayal comes from someone you thought you knew. Other times, it comes from a person you barely even noticed, a coworker who seemed friendly but was really just collecting ammunition. I learned that the hard way after 9 years of keeping my work life and home life completely separate, only to have it all blown up by an office snoop who wanted to use my privacy against me. I've worked at the same office for 9 years. I started at the bottom and worked my way up. I'm good at my job, I get along with everyone, but I've always believed in a strict boundary between work and home. I never talk about my personal life. Not because I'm ashamed. I'm happily married. I have twin daughters who are 7 years old, a dog, a nice house. I play softball, I go kayaking, I climb mountains on weekends. I have a full life. But when I'm at work, I want to be an adult and talk about projects, deadlines, industry news, maybe the latest movie. I don't want to hear about JoJo Siwa or the Kardashians, and I especially don't want to give anyone a reason to gossip about my family. For years, that worked. My coworkers saw me as this quiet, capable person. They knew I was private and most of them respected it. I made good friends at work, people I could joke with about work stuff, grab lunch with, talk about hobbies that weren't family related. I never hid that I had a life outside, I just didn't share the details. Then we hired Melinda about a year ago. She came in all smiles and enthusiasm, the kind of person who acts like she wants to be everyone's best friend. I noticed she asked a lot of questions, too many. She'd inch closer to people during breaks, ask about their weekends, their kids, their spouses, their problems. At first I thought she was just friendly. But after a few weeks, I saw the pattern. She collected information like currency. She'd bring up something someone had confided in her weeks earlier, using it to manipulate conversations or get favors. She was building a dossier on everyone except me. I gave her nothing. Every time she asked where I lived or whether I had kids, I'd deflect. "Oh, I'm boring," I'd say. "Let's talk about the quarterly report." She'd smile and move on, but I could tell it bugged her. I was the one person she couldn't crack. Last Friday, Melinda walked into the office with this smug look like she'd won a prize. At lunch, she gathered everyone in the break room and announced, "Did you know Ali is married with 2 daughters? She has a dog, a house, she plays softball, kayaks, climbs mountains, and she's on Facebook." The room went quiet. I felt my face heat up. My coworkers stared at me, some surprised, a few annoyed that I'd kept secrets. Melinda just stood there with this fake grin, waiting for my reaction. I didn't give her one. I calmly said, "Yes, that's true. I just don't talk about it at work. Nothing wrong with wanting privacy." But inside, I was furious. How did she find out? I use a shortened version of my name on Facebook, Ali instead of Alexandra, and I have my married name on there. My privacy settings are tight, but some photos are shared with friends, so if someone searches hard enough, they can piece things together. She must have used White Pages or some people's search site to connect my work name to my personal one. I reported her to HR that afternoon. I told them she had been stalking my personal information and using it to humiliate me in front of my colleagues. HR took it seriously. They started an investigation. But here's the thing, Melinda had already done damage. Some of my coworkers started treating me differently. A couple of them said, "Why didn't you trust us? We're like family here." And that phrase, "we're like family," always makes my guard go up. Because I've seen what happens when people treat coworkers like family. They think they're entitled to your secrets. They use them against you. A few months earlier, a guy named Hank had shared that his wife was going through chemo. Suddenly, everyone was prying into his marriage, giving unsolicited advice, and when he didn't want to talk about it, they called him cold. Another coworker, Lucy, mentioned she was struggling with childcare, and suddenly management was using that to deny her promotions because they assumed she couldn't handle more hours. Rob posted a vacation photo and got told he didn't deserve the time off because he was always traveling. So yeah, I learned early, keep your mouth shut. The worst part, Melinda didn't stop. After HR opened the investigation, she started spreading rumors that I was hiding something bigger, maybe a criminal record, maybe an affair, maybe I was in witness protection. It was absurd, but some people ate it up. Then I found out the real reason Melinda targeted me. She had overheard that my boss was about to assign me a huge project, one that would put me on the fast track for a promotion. She wanted that project. She thought if she could discredit me, make me look untrustworthy, the boss would give it to her instead. But she miscalculated. My boss knew me for years. He knew I was reliable. He also knew that another colleague, a guy named Rob, had recently been diagnosed with cancer but was still assigned a major project because my boss trusted him to handle it. That's the kind of workplace I was in. Results matter, not gossip. The investigation concluded 2 weeks later. Melinda was suspended without pay for a month and put on a final warning. I got the project, and a few of the coworkers who had judged me actually apologized. They said, "We see why you kept to yourself now." I still keep my personal life private at work. I don't post anything on Facebook that could be traced back to me. I use a different profile photo. But now when new hires ask about my weekend, I just say, "Oh, you know, chores." And I smile because you never know who's watching. You never know who's collecting your secrets to use against you. Melinda taught me that trust is earned, not given, and that the people who demand to know your personal life are often the ones who want to weaponize it. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just careful. And that's how I plan to stay. Sometimes the betrayal comes from someone you thought was your closest friend. That's what happened to me, and it still makes my stomach turn when I think about it. I met my best friend Sarah when I was 11 years old. My family had just moved to a new country and my now sister-in-law introduced us. Sarah was the same age as me and we clicked instantly. We grew up together, went through middle school, high school, college, and eventually became adults with our own lives. We shared some friends but also had separate groups for different things. I thought we were solid. I got married at 27 to a man I'd been with for years. We had a 2-year-old son. My life was good. I worked in an office from 9 to 2 most days with a 30-minute break for a second breakfast. Sometimes I'd walk 5 minutes to my husband's office and grab a coffee. Sometimes I'd work out of town. I'd mention my travel plans to Sarah in casual conversation, nothing too detailed, just "I'm going to City X on Wednesday" during a phone call or text. Last Wednesday, I was supposed to travel for work. But Tuesday night, there was a red alert about the weather. Flood warnings everywhere. My work trip got canceled, so I stayed home with my son. My husband went out at 6 in the morning to make sure his business was closed and put up flood protection. He was back by 7:30 making breakfast. It didn't even start raining until 1 in the afternoon. We spent the whole day together, the three of us. We didn't leave the house until Friday. At 3 that Wednesday, Sarah texted me, "Are you home already? It's flooding where you were traveling." I texted back, "Home safe, simple." I didn't think anything of it. Saturday came, Sarah and I go to the same gym class. After class, she pulled me aside and said we needed to talk in private. We went to my car. She looked serious, almost sympathetic. She said, "On Wednesday I saw your husband with a woman. They were making out and your kid was in the car." My blood ran cold. For a split second I felt the floor drop, but then my brain kicked in. I was home all day Wednesday with my husband and our son. I knew she was lying, but I didn't understand why. I asked her 3 times if she was sure it was this Wednesday. Each time she said yes. I asked what time. She said about 11 in the morning. I asked if it was during the red alert. She said yes. Then she went into this detailed description: my husband making out with a gorgeous blonde Barbie-looking woman in his car while my son was in the back seat. She described the clothes, the lipstick, everything. I just stared at her. I said, "Sarah, I was home with my husband all day Wednesday. He didn't leave the house after 7:30 in the morning. We were together eating breakfast, playing with our son, watching the rain. He wasn't anywhere near that parking lot." Her face went pale. She started stammering. "Maybe I saw him another day, maybe I got the dates wrong," but she had confirmed 3 times it was Wednesday. She had been so specific. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I just said, "I need to go home." I drove away shaking, my head was spinning. Why would my best friend of 18 years try to sabotage my marriage? What did she have to gain? I talked to my husband when I got home. He was baffled. Then he got angry. He said, "She wants you to leave me. She's been jealous of our life for years." I didn't want to believe it. Over the next few days, I confronted Sarah. She broke down crying and admitted she made it up. She said she was lonely. She said she was jealous that I had a happy marriage and a kid and a house and she was still single and struggling. She thought if she could make me doubt my husband, I'd lean on her more. She wanted more time with me. She wanted to travel together as single moms. She actually said that she imagined us both being single moms and hanging out more. I was sick. I cut her off completely. I told our mutual friends what she did. Most of them were horrified. A few sided with her, saying I was overreacting, that she made a mistake. I cut them off too. That was 6 months ago. My marriage is stronger now because of how we handled it, but I still feel the sting. Someone I trusted with my whole childhood, my adolescence, my adult life, tried to burn it all down because she was unhappy. I don't think I'll ever fully trust a friend again the same way. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who want to see you fall. I learned that lesson hard. And then, right when I thought I'd seen the worst of betrayal, life showed me another cruel layer. This time, it was my husband who betrayed me with his ex-wife. I'm a 27-year-old man. I've been married to my husband Peter for 3 years, together for 6. He's 37. We adopted a son, Jack, who's now 7. Jack is my whole world. Peter's ex-wife Allison came before me. They divorced a year before we met. I knew Peter was bisexual and I never had a problem with that. I never had a problem with Allison either, at least not at first. The problem was Peter's family. They were homophobic. They never accepted our marriage. They constantly told Peter he should get back together with Allison. 2 weeks ago, we went to Peter's hometown for Jack's birthday party. His mother had been insisting we celebrate with the extended family. I didn't want to go, but Jack wanted to see his cousins. So we went. The party was fine at first. Jack was happy playing with his cousins, opening presents. Then his mother decided to invite Allison. She showed up in the middle of the party. I didn't want to ruin Jack's day, so I stayed calm. I kept Jack occupied. I played with him and his cousins. Everything was fine. Then it was time to cut the cake. I looked around for Peter and Allison. They were gone. I went inside the house and searched. I found them in Peter's old bedroom. They were taking their clothes off. I stood there for a moment, shocked. Then I turned around and went back to the party. I cut the cake with Jack. I helped him open presents. I smiled. I did not scream. I did not cry, not in front of my son. When Peter and Allison came back downstairs, Peter pulled me aside. He was angry. He said I shouldn't have cut the cake without him. He said I was disrespectful. I looked at him and said, "I'm sorry. I thought you were too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants." He went quiet. I took Jack and left for the hotel. That night, after Jack was asleep, Peter showed up. He admitted everything. He said Allison initiated it. He said his mother pushed them together. He said it was a mistake. He begged me to forgive him. I didn't forgive him. I filed for divorce 3 days later. During the discovery process, I found out something even worse. Allison had never stopped seeing Peter. She had been his mistress for years, even before we got married. And she had a daughter by him, a 14-year-old daughter. She had hidden the pregnancy from Peter, raised the girl alone, and only told him about her a few months before the party. He had been secretly visiting them. The girl thought he was her stepfather. It was a tangled, disgusting mess. I got full custody of Jack. Peter didn't fight it. He was too busy trying to build a relationship with a teenage daughter who hated him for abandoning her. 6 months later, I'm in a new apartment with Jack. Some days he asks why we don't see Daddy. I tell him the truth. Daddy made bad choices. That's not a lie. And Peter, he's trying to co-parent with Allison, but it's a disaster. She still tells people I was the side piece. His family says I was never good enough. I don't care. I have my son. I have my self-respect. Sometimes you don't know who you're sleeping next to. Sometimes you don't know who you're calling a friend, but you can survive. You find a new normal. You build a life that's yours, and you never stop watching your back.